We are less than a week away from the end of the summer transfer window. Hearts have made 9 additions already, added to 5 in January. But there is a squad of 30 plus still there, signed by 5 different managers in total. Will Hearts add any more? How many will leave? And is there any update on Islam Chesnikov? To discuss all that and more on today's Hearts Standard, I am joined by our editor, Joe Sked. Joe, have you recovered from the weekend yet?
Yeah. I've literally just not long finished watching the game back from the weekend. I'd meant to do it on Sunday, but couldn't be bothered because I'd been out Saturday and then didn't have time yesterday to do it. So yeah, I've went back into that experience once more to flick through it. I watched it at times 3 speed, so didn't have to go through the full 90 minutes.
We will talk a bit about that at the end. We'll leading off the analysis piece that I did yesterday for the site. But just before we do, one quick question about it: was it better or worse? You feel than was there anything that you felt significantly different about watching it back?
I didn't think. Watching it back, I didn't think Hearts were as bad as I remembered, and I didn't think Motherwell were as good as I remembered. It's weird. It's weird watching it. I always watching the game back. It gives me just a different perspective of it. There's when you're watching a game and at the stadium and it's happening in front of you. And like the kind of the crowd noise as well. I think it plays with what you see, and then watching it back, and you're able to kind of rewind bits and go back to see other bits, and it gives you just a different perspective. So I've got a couple of things that when we go on to speak about it, that it was a wee bit. A couple of things that kind of caught my eye, not positively, but yeah, it was. It's always the case where I think sometimes when you're at a game and you think, wow, that was amazing, and you watch it back and think, okay, it wasn't that good, and then vice versa as well. When you think, that was terrible, and then you kind of see things that are maybe a wee bit, you see things just differently.
Yeah, definitely. And then you go into it with the perspective of already seeing it in person as well, which I think helps. So you kind of see it from both sides. Not only are you seeing it on the television, sometimes you miss things on television, but you've already got the kind of perspective of seeing it in person. So aye. Just before we do discuss all that and the latest to do with the transfer window, I see that there's already comments flying in. Thank you to everybody joining us. Please get your comments in. We'll get to as many as we can. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do like what we do, please head over to heartstandard.co.uk or download our app. We believe that is the best way to enjoy our content. But on both that and the website, some of the content's free. Other stuff you have to subscribe for. Right now, if you go to the website, we are running a deal where you can get your first 6 months for £1, or you can get your first year for £12. Everybody who signs up before the end of this month, which is the end of this week, will be eligible for our prize draw. This is open to current subscribers also. You can win a 2025-26 home shirt signed by the first team. T's and C's apply. Heart Standard is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Right, we're going to go through the kind of roundup of the state of play going into the final week of the transfer window, if you will. Joel, you wrote a piece kind of summing up where we are. One of the things that was mentioned within there, and one of the things that has been a bit of a discussion point, not just because of the kind of the form or the rustiness of not playing so many games recently of Xander Clark, but also the injuries to goalkeepers and whether Hearts are going to make a move in the transfer market.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of like the main priority between now and the end of the end of the window, which closes on Monday at 11 p.m. Believe progress has been made on a goalkeeper signing. I think the club are confident that they will bring one in. It's not an area that they've. It's an area that's been forced into, and I know there's been a lot of discussion around the goalkeeper situation. Fans going back even a few months talking about the goalkeeper situation, but I think you have to accept that within the last 12 months, three first team goalkeepers have been given new contracts. So when Ryan Fulton was fit, and then when Craig Gordon weren't really sure about his timeline, you're thinking it's a hard one to make a case for, to bring in a fourth goalkeeper who can look to be number one. But the circumstances have changed where Ryan Fulton's out long term. The timeline on Gordon's recovery is still uncertain, and then that leaves you with Xander Clark and then two younger goalkeepers that I think Hearts in an ideal world would prefer to be out on loan, both Harry Stone and Liam McFarlane. Liam McFarlane's above Harry Stone in the pecking order. I think we've seen that with his recall from Alloa Athletic, and he goes straight onto the bench, and perhaps he could even be pushing Xander Clark for the number one spot on Saturday. So I think in an ideal world they bring someone else in, and then it allows Stone and or McFarlane to potentially leave on loan, because obviously the loan window extends further, but there does feel like there's need for three first team goalkeepers. I think most teams go with three first team goalkeepers now, and you see at the weekends with Hearts that all like three goalkeepers are involved in the kind of, not the match day squad, but the travelling squad, and with kind of warm up aspect of it. So yes, I think goalkeeper is one that expect to get over the line, and whoever comes in will be challenging for the number one spot, I would imagine, as well, rather than just bringing someone in for a case of backup. You're on mute.
Sorry, you say three first team goalkeepers have all been given contracts. All three have been injured as well in recent times, so it's not as if it makes sense why Derek McInnes is being kind of forced to move here. The Gordon scenario, are we just kind of at the stage now where it's a bonus? Anything from, I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be much progress being made, but is there a chance of, are his hopes of coming back and being Hearts number one fading? Is it like more he is looking to kind of come back and provide competition at some point?
I would say that number one depends on that kind of Xander Clark's position, how well he plays, and also whoever comes in as the challenge for number one, and potentially they making a claim for their spot. Craig Gordon will certainly be doing everything he can to get back and trying to play before the end of the season. It's not gone the way he's wanted it. I think he had his eyes set on one final season's Hearts number one and trying to push to get back in the Scotland squad. He returned. He's like kind of been doing bits, kind of more and more training wise. I think he's been working. I think the last update we got was that he's working with Paul Gallagher, but it was like every other day he was doing stuff rather than consecutive days. So it's just it's an injury that they thought wasn't going to be they just thought it was kind of like a nerve injury that would essentially be a short-term thing, but it's such a unique situation that it's a difficult one to improve quickly, and it's one of those where you're looking at kind of time. So, for example, if it was like a shoulder, like a rotator cuff, or like an elbow, or even just like a hamstring, then clubs like, okay, we've got a guidance of how long this is going to be. Whereas this situation is that there's no they can't just go, I don't know how it works in the physio world, but like a manual and go, no, it's just going to be 4 to 6 weeks. That's not been the case. So yeah, it's been a very frustrating thing for Craig Gordon. But I wouldn't say that he's struggling. He'll be struggling to play again for Hearts. It just kind of depends on how his injury develops and how well a goalkeeper or goalkeepers perform in the meantime.
Rob Gamblow says, would possibly like to see an attacking mid come in at some point of the season, although unlikely. Right back is definitely a priority. Gordon the Speed says the right back situ is throwing off the overall balance, really needs address. Hopefully can move out a few. And Robert McDougall says hopefully another right back comes in. And that moves us on to the right back situation. I think I kind of agreed with what Gordon was saying there about I mean, I'm not holding out. I wouldn't be surprised if the transfer window closed and Hearts hadn't signed another right back, but I agree with the point here wholeheartedly that it's had such an impact on the team. Hearts this season might have still been a pretty decent start all in, but it could have looked a lot better if Borchgrevink just hadn't got injured. Because remember we were saying that going into the Aberdeen game that the question mark over Borchgrevink meant that if he was fit, that looks like the perfect lineup that we want for. I mean, given what's available, that was the lineup that we agreed on going in, and it's about the only predicted 11 we're going to get right the entire season. And you feel like we would have seen that a wee bit more if Borchgrevink had just stayed fit.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the. It's the one thing we didn't want to happen, and it's happened. And I can understand fans pointing to, well, what do you expect? And when they can just point to his kind of injury record, he missed a full season recently, and then he had issues coming into pre-season. So anything when that happens with Hearts make a signing, there's immediately red flags, just because Hearts fans have been so used to having to deal with players coming in and having injury issues. It's been a frustration over the last countless years, not just this iteration of Hearts. It's gone beyond different managers, different staff, etc. So yeah, I can understand the frustration, and I think
Glasgow Boys podcast. Thank you. I overlooked that when I did the other ones.
Just says, afternoon, guys. Not signing a right back would be a massive mistake, in my opinion. Borch feels like someone who will be consistently injured and Forrest are not selected. Can't keep playing players out of position. Now, I think Graham from the Goalkeeper Boys podcast speaks for a lot of Hearts fans in that little sentence when he says not signing a right back would be a mistake, in my opinion. And it's not an ideal situation. I totally get that. And it's, you talk about the balance, and like Marty says here, really needs at least one player who can play a right wing back, right wing, and that's the thing at the moment, is that you look at the centre backs, and there's not a natural right wing back. There's both been McEntee and Forrest who have played there. Both have had issues when they played there in the last couple of games. Michael Steinbender played at right back on Saturday. Having watched, I thought at the time I thought he'd struggled, but watching it back, I thought he was actually better than I thought when he played. And then there's the Forrester aspect, and I wouldn't be surprised if Forrester's more involved in the coming in the next few weeks, whether it's before or after the transfer window. I also look back at Forrester. Thought he did really well against Sunderland as a right wing back in the pre-season friendly. So yes, it's not an ideal situation. In an ideal world, there perhaps would be another right back signing. But what I would say is that Hearts have signed Christian Borchgrevink as the guy to play right back. Exactly. So there's two aspects of this. Firstly, the squad size. Come on to talk about that shortly. But the squad size budget aspect is that the goalkeeper is seen as more of a priority, and it's natural that you need to move on players to bring in other players, because I think the squad is currently sitting at 32, and yes, that includes like 5 players who are currently injured. But on the flip side is that Hearts, if they were to sign like signings now, if they're to sign anyone between now and Monday, that player has to come in and improve the starting lineup. Hearts are not wanting to sign anyone who's going to come in and be a backup. Borchgrevink was signed to be the right wing back / right back. That was decided. They've got really high hopes for him, And then it means that if they were to sign a right back, it would be someone who is to usurp him. And then you've got basically, when he gets fit, and I don't think his injuries as bad as first feared, if you're to sign someone else at right back, then you've got 2 first choice right backs. And again, it's not an ideal situation. When you look on the left hand side, it's Harry Mill has made the left wing back position himself, and you've got Kingsley, who is a versatile backup. So that's the situation. It might be one that resolves itself over the next 12 months. That might be Borchgrevink coming in and making the position his own and playing running games and not being injured, or they may have to say, okay, it's not worked out, and they'll have to go back into the market for a potential right back. And then that's where a lot of Hearts fans will go, I told you should have done it back in the summer. But that's to try and provide a wee bit of context. So it's not just as easy as going out and going, you know what, let's just sign another player to add to the squad when they've already signed a right back who they believe is going to be the right back for the future.
The most common things that I see, including in our comments, is sign right back and get players out, and you can't sort of have it both ways. And that's kind of what you're saying there, is you don't sign another first choice right back to then put yourself in the situation where you've got 2 first choice right backs and, again, bloated squad, players that aren't playing. And as I wouldn't quite put it this way myself, Fraser M says, can we afford to bring in another player at this point? I think that's part of the issue, even if it's not quite the finances. It's Hearts have to start moving players out, and that's kind of where we'll go to next. There's lots of comments to do with this. You can jump in at any point, Joe. How worried is everyone about Wilson's potential development this year? I feel like we need to send him or Cabango on loan, potentially Motherwell or St Mirren. I didn't realise Cabango was mentioned there at first. I thought it was just Wilson. Surely Musa needs to be moved on, says Ian Lyon. Sorry, Danny Scott was that first comment. Wilson needs to go. He's Robert Gill. Wilson needs to go on loan. Musa needs to go out permanently along with Khartoum. McInnes has to stop playing players out of position.
Sean Casey says, sorry, Khartoum should go. Forrest should go. I feel we have cover for the right back position with Steinbender and Forrester until Borch is back.
I imagine Khartoum is going to fall into the category of difficult to move on. And if, unless somebody's willing to come in and take him on loan or come in and pay something for him, and I'd imagine give him a decent contract as well, then he's probably going to be at Hearts for a wee while because he was just signed. And that is one of the issues, and one of the things that you alluded to in your article, Joel, is that there's a few different managers worth of players still at the squad, and that kind of what follows on from that is it's not everything's going to be addressed in one transfer window.
Yeah, that's it. I think what did I count as manager players signed by Craig Levein, Robbie Nielsen, Stephen Naismith, Neil Critchley, or signed under Craig Levein, Robbie Nielsen.
Yes, exactly. That's
Stephen Naismith, Neil Critchley, and now Derek McInnes. So,
and a couple signed before Derek McInnes, kind of like between the last manager and McInnes as well. So there's some that are the Khartoum's a bit different because it was during Critchley, but Borchgrevink. So basically 2 Critchley signings that, and Kizaridis is another one as well that was signed before he came in as well. So some of them are nothing to do with him.
So yeah, Borchgrevink was that was announced while Critchley was still manager, and then the deals for Braga and Kizaridis were, I think, well down the path, but they fit. They pretty much fit in terms of what McInnes wanted in terms of another striker option who's mobile. We've seen that with Braga, and then Kizaridis, who maybe not the prototype McInnes winger, but someone who adds creativity and a go for it. And we've seen that so far, and we'll hopefully see more of it. I think he will become more and more involved and more important. But yeah, it's always really difficult to move on players, especially if players have got decent contracts. And as we talked about, there's a lot of guys who, this isn't just guys here at the squad just now, but this is the Hearts history. There's a lot of guys where when they come to Hearts are the biggest club that they'll play for. And in turn with that, they'll get one of the better contracts in their career. So it's it's a mix of what there needs to be interested parties. Those interested parties will need to pay what either the club wants or the player wants, and then the player actually will want to go to that club. And it's not as if Hearts are just kind of sitting on their hands like, oh, hopefully someone comes knocking our door for certain players. But it's there's trying to move players on, and then it's difficult. The situation is that there's no, every player is available, and that's the way it's always going to be. So it requires interest from outside, and I think the club ideally would have moved on a few by now, but that's they're still hopeful of getting more out the door. I think they would ideally like maybe 4 or 5 to move on. I think some of the names mentioned, it's not rocket science to work out some of the players who could move on. Musa Drama has not been involved in a squad. Xander Khartoum, I think he's actually responded well to the situation he is in, and I think he's impressed, but he's still kind of down the pecking order as well. And then you've also got Vargas, a difficult one because he's came back late because of international duty, and then he's been injured. So, but I still see him as an asset because of his age, his profile, the type of player he is, the fact he's internationalist as well. So he could, if he doesn't move on, he is someone who I think has attracted interest and will attract interest. But if that doesn't turn into concrete interest, then I could still see him contributing. So it's a very difficult balancing act that the club have at the moment. In an ideal world, Derek McInnes would come in with a clean slate, and there would be a spine of the team there, and then he is able to add to it. But it's going to take 2-3 windows to get a more manageable squad, a more balanced squad. There's a lot being done already to the squad. I think next summer will be quite interesting, because if you look at the players who are out of contract at the end of the season, there's quite a few, and I do think that presents an opportunity to move players on and then reconfigure the squad even more in McInnes's liking.
Gorga Boys podcast asks, is there any actual interest in certain players? Is there anything you understand that's inquiries for anyone in particular, anything like that?
I've heard bits and bobs in terms of rumours, but nothing. I've not heard of anything concrete. There's been inquiries for a few, but there's seen folk like Kingsley being mentioned in relation to Falkirk, but I think that's just easy to put two together. And also, I think Hearts might be reluctant to allow that to happen, considering there's a situation with the right back. They don't want to get a situation with the left back where Harry Milne, something gets happening to Harry Milne, and there's no one to fill in at left back there. So yeah, I would not heard anything concrete. I would expect players to move on. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 1 or 2 surprise exits, but that again comes back to interest. There's been a lot of chat about Wilson. I'd be very, very surprised if he was moved out on loan. Derek McInnes really rates him. I think he'll be kind of third, kind of Shanklin, Braga, him / Kabori, as I think he'll get plenty of game time. And
yeah, he says he wants 4 or 5 strikers, so I'd imagine Wilson's within that 4 or 5.
Yeah, so it's I just think it goes back to, I think it's started something earlier on, and it's sometimes there's been a wee bit of a reactionary over the last couple of days, games. Like Danny Scott says, I saw some people online saying that Shanklin needs to be stripped of the captaincy, which is wild. They're still unbeaten over 90 minutes this season. It's been two difficult, not difficult games, but 2 games where Hearts fans wanted to win, didn't win, and there's been issues within it. But it's not been a disaster. There's been far more positives since Shanklin. I think once the team gets more cohesive, which I think it will, and kind of settles down a wee bit, he'll start getting chances, and I think him and Braga will start working better and better together. And so I don't think there's too much to worry about around like kind of Shankland or Wilson. I think these guys over the course of the season will contribute and will be productive and will be effective.
Got this from Gavaldo just before we move on, or unless you were bringing any more comments after this. Steinvender and Carton and many of the Jamestown signings from January haven't made any impact. I think that's a bit harsh. I think obviously Carton, he had flashes last season and then didn't really settle in, and then he's been nowhere to be seen this season. Steinvender's been a wee bit stop-start. I think it's just kind of like a victim of a very sort of strong area of the team, but I think Steinvender's good and will play a role this season. And then what the other ones? Milne, McCart, Kubangu. Kubangu started well, and then again, like it's barely been seen this season. But yeah, I would say that's a wee bit harsh, isn't it? I mean, and again, as we were discussing earlier, it's from one manager. They were signed under a different manager, so there's maybe explanations for why some of them aren't playing as much.
Yeah, I can feel sorry for Khartoum a bit because he came in and we talked about it. You expected him to play do the reverse of Spittle and play off the right hand side, and he never really got that. And I think he got it was a bit of mix of not a bit of like a fright, but didn't. It's taken a bit of getting used to Scottish football, and then in a team that was underperforming and is shifting around different positions. And now it's a case where I just don't think he is a Derek McInnes type of player. He fits into what the kind of Derek McInnes wants. So it's a player who has the circumstances have changed and he just doesn't really fit.
Any other comments you want to bring in before we kind of move on to a wee bit of analysis from Saturday's game?
There's absolute loads. So sorry, I've been trying to keep an eye on them. I think it's talk about Mill, and I think Tom Gill had understand the blue model. Every player's for sale, but what happens if good offers come in from Milne and Braga in the next 48 hours? So I think this is one where if the money is really good, then I think the way Jamestown be able to work is that they will have potential options that they'll be able to just go, right, we can move on them because they've brought in a fair bit of money, rather than it's a case of like an injury and they're having to bring in another player. The fact that someone's going out, they can potentially bring on someone in. So I don't foresee either of those players moving on before us, just to dampen any worry.
Yeah, you're quelling Sam's fears as well then, because Sam has said slightly worried that Milne could be attracting interest. Well, we won't get a Penrice type fee. We've barely missed him with Milne's.
Hearts have got an option on Harry Milne's contract as well.
Of course, yeah, right enough. Right, let's move on. Should we switch roles for this bit? Is that the best way to do it, or should I just introduce the?
No, go for it. I can take over. So you put out an article on. We actually meant to do this video yesterday afternoon, but for one or two reasons we couldn't do it, and it was to look back at your analysis, and because we kind of watched the game back and were able to delve a wee bit deeper into and maybe expand on our instant reaction from Saturday's game. You watched it back over the weekend, well, Sunday and then Monday. What stood out from you in terms of what went wrong in those first hour that Hearts found themselves down 3-0 down to Motherwell?
I think the main thing that went wrong is that Hearts never had any sustained control or pressure in the first half. I think that the way Motherwell play and how well coached they are in it, I think it was always going to be the case that they had a lot of possession. But I think if you look at that first half, a lot of the possession is in their own half and they don't actually create much. The goal that they score is from a corner and from a deflected shot. Now, the two goals that they score after the break are exactly what they'd been trying to do for the entire 45 minutes. But I felt that on the day you're on the day in that first half, I was watching it thinking, Hearts have been given the runaround here. And I didn't think it was quite that in the first half. I thought it was more that from as soon as the second half started till 3-0, I thought that was when Hearts were getting the runaround. But before that, Motherwell really didn't create much at all. And Hearts actually stopped them from getting out. There was a few issues where McInnes had to go out and tell Kabori, keep reminding Kabori to follow Longello. And you can see with one chance, basically wrote in the analysis that there was 2 warning signs in terms of what Motherwell were doing. And one of those, Hearts don't have the press. Probably Devlin isn't high up enough. You could maybe argue that Shanklin should wait until he gets there. And then the other one, which O'Donnell did on the other side a few times. Longello did on the other side a few times. You can see O'Donnell wait for Forrest to turn his back, and then he makes a run up his blind side, and then that's when the keeper's got the ball. And then 2 passes, he's got it, and then he can make one more pass, and Motherwell have got a 2-on-2 at the back. So there wasn't much of that from Motherwell in the first half. They scored from it twice in the second half. But yeah, I think the most disappointing thing was that Hearts did nothing until really late in the game.
Yeah, I was watching it back. Probably something that I appreciated was just how panicky Hearts were. The Motherwell, you talked about Motherwell. Is this Motherwell playing?
That's their pressure. So they basically Hearts. I said to you at one point, Hearts have barely put any crosses in, and I said that Harry Milne's not. I said this in the first half. Harry Milne's not playing like the usual left winger that he is, and I think this might sum it up that there were pressuring Hearts in the wide areas, especially the left.
Yeah, and it's Motherwell wanted to play in their defensive third because they wanted to get Hearts up the pitch and then take advantage of the space in behind the midfield, because I think there were some warning signs there against going back to Aberdeen game where Hearts vacated a bit of space in front of their back 3, but in that case, like against the back 3, then at least you can have one stepping out and it's not as egregious as leaving loads of space in front of the back 2. So yeah, the panicky aspect of it, and I'll bring up not a ideal example of the panicky aspect, but there's like a couple of times where like kind of Xander Clark took too long, or he didn't kick properly, and then that just adds to the feeling of I think frustration and tension within the support. And also I really think Hearts on a couple of occasions shot themselves in the foot or added pressure to themselves without needing to. I'll give there's one really bad there's one example that I think sums up the moments when Hearts did have the ball and they didn't do what you needed to at Tynecastle. And this is things like where you can invite pressure on yourselves by playing backwards or sideways, when I think when there's a wee bit of anxiety in the crowd, just play forward. And if that means you're losing the ball further up the pitch, I think that's okay, because Hearts fans will see, right, they're trying to progress the game, they're trying to get forward. I think that is a much more positive sign than trying to maybe keep the ball and then going backwards, and then it just brings kind of groans and frustration. And the one bit from the game, I'm trying to add it as a goal, because if I did it earlier on, it would have. So Cammy Devlin got the ball in the middle of the park. Where is it? So this is it. So this was the one that like kind of blew my mind at the time. Was this Cammy Devlin got the ball in the park, and you look at the opportunity Hearts have on the attack. So Shanklin in the middle of the park. He actually pointed to Devlin to Kabori. Kabori's asking for it. Just send it in the wing. There's also the option of just going wide to Steinbender, and then you're potentially got a 2v1 on the other side. Yep. And then it goes from
Longello. Sorry, just before you continue, Longello absolutely does not want Kabori getting that ball, by the way.
No, absolutely not. And then you go from, if you bear with me 2 seconds, you go from that to this one where and then it goes from that where you've got a really good promising attack to this where you've got Devlin going back to the defence, and that shouldn't happen at Tynecastle. That should the instinct thought of Hearts should be from that position is play forward, don't go backwards, and put pressure on Motherwell. So yes, I thought Hearts out of possession got things wrong, and that's what you detailed in your analysis, which I would recommend anyone to go watch. But also, I think in possession, Hearts really didn't help themselves, and it wasn't until later in the game when you got Bragg on, who was far more positive in possession, far more direct, and then Spittle as well, who set up the second goal, albeit playing the type of pass that you want to put Motherwell on the back foot and get it behind their defence. Albeit I don't think it was actually meant for Braga. I think he saw Shankland running, and Braga then saw the opportunity and did the running behind. So yeah, there was frustration, and I did think Hearts brought a lot of that on themselves.
The goalkeeper, going back to the goalkeeper, is a good example because it feels like at games like that when Hearts go back to the goalkeeper, it's because they're being too safe or because there's nothing on. Whereas you look at Motherwell, I'm forgetting if it's the second or the third goal because both of them come via Stephen O'Donnell, who just, I don't know what he turns into when he plays against Hearts. But the ball, Motherwell go up the left wing and then retreat and go back to the goalkeeper. The kind of thing that if Hearts had done on the day, this is in the second half, it's kind of thing that if Hearts had done on the day, they would have got booed for, basically. But they go back to Callum Ward. But that's so that they can get into another position so that they can then work it out and then create something on the other side, which they did. So it's like, that was an example of going back to your goalkeeper with a purpose, whereas the one that you've shown with Devlin there, it's either he's not quick-minded enough or confident enough or whatever it is to play the pass, and then he's playing it safe instead, and it slows everything down, and then Motherwell are back in position. Whereas, as we pointed out, Longelo, there's a potential one-on-one there if he plays that. There's a potential two-on-one if he gets it out to the right.
Yeah, and so there's two incidents where you could just show Devlin, who didn't have. We are obviously both big Devlin fans, but he didn't have a good game on Saturday. And there was one where he had the ball in the centre circle and he could have just played one pass and it would have taken out a couple of Motherwell players, but he went and turned and played it back to Xander Clark. Here, it's like Kabori, I think we will start to see him more through the middle for Hearts. And that's something that Tom talked about. But he got a lot of possession really deep, and he couldn't really impact the game. And there was times where he was just there was 2 or 3 Motherwell players on him. But that's the exact situation you want Kabori on the ball. As if you can get him the ball in that situation for him to drive, like having watched, read what Tom said and watched clips of him driving 1v1 against a defender, because he can commit him on either side, and then he wants to score. But the Hearts passed up that opportunity. So yeah, there's still remnants of Hearts' old ways, and there does need to be a change. And I do think that comes with playing and integrating more and getting Bragg on the pitch, getting Kizaridis on the pitch, getting guys who are not as safe and are a bit more dynamic and a bit more creative. We've both, like, for example, Forrest, I would much rather see Kizaridis playing on the left than Alan Forrest. We know what we're going to get from Alan Forrest, and it's not the same excitement as you get with Kizaridis. So yes, there are growing pains, but I still think you have to also look at the positives. The fact that the mentality within the squad, the attitude to come back from 3 goals down, perhaps should have won it, is excellent. Still unbeaten, yes, well, in 90 minutes, and it's been a positive start to the season. But I do think that there will be, and hopefully will be, more kind of change within who becomes the key players and the key core within the squad over the coming weeks.
let's finish with a couple of comments, unless you've got anything else you want to add in after it. Kind of following on from what you're saying there, because I think it excuses some of the mistakes that people are bringing up here. But Spearhead is saying, any of you concerned about Derek McInnes? Already made a handful of mistakes. Wasn't that the whole point of getting an experienced manager? Big concerns, says Andrew Forrester. Spearhead again, playing a midfielder, Kabore, Devlin, McAtee, Forrest isn't going to be very creative. Playing Wilson and Shankland up top is very concerning. Why not Kabore and Braga? And then McInnes from FNDER, whose name I always trip over. McInnes was playing centre backs at right back for Kelly and wingers at wing back. Needs to realise that won't be acceptable at a club like Hearts. He's done those things with success in the past as well,
and Aberdeen.
I meant like beyond just Kilmarnock, but I think that that's a common sentiment. That's kind of like a growing sentiment, it seems, which for me is bonkers. I mean, this is what Hibs did for years and years. They appointed a new manager. They waited for the first sign of it going wrong, and then there was like a growing negativity until they were out the door. And a lot of that's not appointing the right guy, yes. And I don't know, look at what Rangers are going through as well. Now, Derek McInnes is a manager who has had stability throughout his career. He's a unique type in the modern game in that he spends years at clubs. He's not sacked within a year, or he doesn't leave when the first better offer comes in and that kind of thing. And there's an element of, I think, is a good fit there, and in time that will tell and that will show. But I think some of the issues that we are seeing here, we've alluded to some of them, we did after the game on Saturday, is that he has so many players and he has to see what they're like. Some of them have to play games before he can make a proper decision on them, and not a Premier Sports group stage game and not a bounce game against Ross County on a Tuesday night or a Tuesday afternoon. It's proper matches, and Derek McInnes is allowed to experiment to a point as well, and to make mistakes and become a better manager for it. It's not just going to be a linear journey. Sorry, that turned into a wee bit of a rant.
I mean, I don't think there's big concerns. There's been an issue with the last couple of games, like for example, Andrew Crack's shown already. It's like there's been 3 league games and a cup game and 4 Premier Sports Cup game. Hearts haven't lost in 90 minutes. Yes, there's been a couple of disappointing performances, but the team have shown kind of great character, etc., to come back from it. And yes, that can't keep happening because you get caught out. I think that there's understandable where fans are like, oh, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? But like you said, there's a big squad. The fact he started Kabore the last 2 games. He started Kizaridis the week before. He started Magnuson. He started Braga first couple of games of the season. So I think there's no issue with guys being foreign players starting. He's still looking for the right blend. I think once everything settles down and there's I think everything will be fine. Yes, there's been a couple of selection issues, but again, he's learning about the players. The players are learning about him. I do think in time we'll see a settled core, and I don't think will be I think some of the concerns will be allayed.
He wants to kind of address the foreign thing. He's said a few times that he wants them. He's quite clear that he wants any players that come in to speak English, but that's a practicality thing and not a xenophobic thing. That's just so the players can communicate with each other on and off the pitch. And in terms of cracks showing already, I would term it more as those cracks were already there, and he's covered up even more cracks from last season. I think it's looking at it the wrong way around. He's coming to fix something that was broken. He hasn't come into something perfect that is then starting to break.
Yeah, I mean, Hearts finished bottom 6 last season, and there's been a big turnover in players. Should be, if you ask many, we've been hoped to have had a bigger turnover of players moving on and stuff. So managers need time. managers, even experienced managers, make mistakes, get things wrong, especially coming into a new club where they're still working with players that maybe wouldn't exactly been in their plans as well. So I would the thought of being kind of getting worried after 7 or 8 games is like, if it becomes a sustained longer period, then yeah, be worried. But I think managers deserve certainly more time, and certainly McInnes deserves more time. And I think it's been more than enough positives to take. And there's like round the talk of the starting lineup, 7 changes at half time shows he's getting it wrong all the time. Just put the best team out there from the start. Again, what's the best team? Ask every Hearts fan, and there'd be so many different decisions. I don't think there's a best 11. I don't think any kind of manager views as having a best 11. I think there's a core of players they want to use, and McInnes kind of alluded to that. It's like he could have turned to the bench and any one of them could have started. There'd been a couple of guys in the stands that he would have been happy starting as well. So yeah, it's one where it's a couple of poor performances, but it's I don't think it's quite time to hit that emergency button. I think everyone should just go. It's going to take time, and managers should be allowed time. Still unbeaten 90 minutes, and I think the team are progressing in the right way. There'll be bumps in the road, and again, this squad will continue to develop over the next 2-3 transfer windows.
Imagine Hearts had lost the league game, Joe. Is there anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Nah, I've talked enough.
We have talked a lot. Please check everything out at heartstandard.co.uk. There's plenty of stuff related to what we're talking about, and there will be more going up, especially as the transfer deadline draws near. We will be back at some point later in the week, but until then, we'll speak to you all soon.